Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night breakdown. Daniel Rutledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all the action in Super League basketball this week. Dave, before we get into the action of Super League basketball, we have to do our annual weekly update of the latest goings on regarding the national governing body. And obviously, late Friday night, it was announced that they had gone into liquidation. I'll just, for those who haven't seen it, read out at least some of the press release. The British Basketball Federation today announced it has ceased trading due to significant and unanticipated reduction in income and unforeseen expenditure, resulting in the company's inability to meet its liabilities as they fall due. With the support of professional advisors, BBF is taking necessary steps to place the company into liquidation. The immediate priority for all domestic basketball stakeholders is to work closely with the international governing body FIBA to ensure the ongoing stability and security of the Britain national teams, including delivering on our uh, participation commitment to the upcoming FIBA competitions. The BBF appreciates the ongoing commitment of the UK government, UK sport, and FIBA to rebuilding a strong and sustainable governance structure for the sport in Great Britain. And it goes on to say a little bit more about that. And there's some quotes from the task force and from the home country associations as well. Obviously, my sympathy lies with the people who work for the BBF in whatever capacity, but whatever side of the fence you sit on in British basketball, Dave, with this, whilst not wholly unexpected, indeed long trailed, it's not a good moment for the sport. I've seen one or two responses, people crowing, but whatever your views of BBF have done or not done in the last 18 months, the last 9 years, even the last 20 years, if you go back to the BPB days, this is not really a good outcome for the sport.
No, crowing I think isn't right. As you say, people have lost jobs. More importantly, creditors will have lost money. I'm not quite sure who they would be. Probably kit suppliers, maybe venue owners, I'm guessing. But other than that, there's not really that much in the way of outgoings that the federation actually had. But it's never good when something happens. Um, what I will say is that the fact that we've got to it is an indictment of everything that we've talked about at length, ad nauseum over the past year.
Hmm.
Um, what happens next is now far more important
Hmm.
than picking the bones out of what's happened and why it's happened. Um, I don't give any credence to the words that you've just read out.
Hmm.
They're words. I'm
Hmm.
afraid that even in liquidation, I don't think the people who have been involved in this come out of it particularly well.
Hmm.
Unforeseen expenditure.
Hmm.
What are you talking about?
There
You
was
know,
a couple of bits. The number one is the reduction in
income.
look. I get if you go into liquidation, there are certain things that you say to make sure that you don't get any personal liabilities coming back to you. So I get that.
Yeah.
But the unanticipated reduction in income, I thought was a bit strange because the one thing we would say about BBF and BPB over the 20 years or so of existence is there hasn't been enough income generated beyond what is consistent from UK sport from the government.
If they
So
put the tickets on sale for Lithuania 6 months ago, they'd have 75 grand now.
well, yeah,
I mean, I
but
know
there's
it's not big money in the grand scheme of things, but it keeps you ticking over.
yeah.
Um, yeah, that just doesn't sit true. And like you say, you mentioned liability, personal liability, etc. Well, say nothing. Again, it's if you've got nothing to say nothing.
Mm,
Um, but that just doesn't kind of ring true in any way, shape, or form. Um, in relation to the people they were talking about working with, there was no mention of the SLB.
mm.
Which again you're damned by your
I think it said stakeholders. It said all
yeah,
domestic
but then
stakeholders.
it named them and named the other
Yeah,
ones.
yeah, yeah.
And it didn't name the SLB. So that just goes to show that factionalism continues. And these things they don't matter, but they kind of do
Mm,
matter. A word in a press release, yeah, can just indicate a movement. A degree. And the reason it's so important, Dan, is because when Grant took over 15 months ago, the opportunity was there to bring everybody together.
mm,
And to bring everybody together, what you have to have more than anything else is everybody with an understanding of each other's positions.
mm,
They have to understand where the other parties, the other quote mark stakeholders, and how I hate that word,
mm,
where they're coming from, what they require, what their remit is, and what they need. Because ultimately, you can't work together if somebody feels that they're being bullied or pushed or not trusted. Yeah. And so when stuff like that is said, and this is an organization, liquidation, who is still
mm,
working to maintain stability. I mean, dear me,
mm,
we're literally, stable 60,000 leagues under the sea at
mm,
the moment. But when you can't open that tent out to everybody, then it suggests there's a little bit of hangover, and that's not good. Because what's most important is what happens now. Now, we know that from last week that SLB have a license from FIBA. So the whole license thing is now a dead duck in relation
mm,
to using it as a method of control, if I can put it that way.
mm,
And previously BBF had sought to use the license as a method of control. And they had incurred expenditure, and there's no mention in that press release of legal fees or anything of that nature.
mm,
So we assume that's nothing to do. I assume what they're talking about has nothing to do with legal fees, which would tend to suggest that somebody else was paying the legal fees, which would tend to suggest that it was Mr. Glakeman. Um, but now that's gone. So now I'm not an expert in insolvency law. I don't know what happens when a new body is set up and Mr. Glickman comes after that new body for whatever money he's given to the old body.
mm,
I don't know if transfer of undertakings applies. Somebody will probably text me after this to tell me whether it does or not.
mm.
But basically, there are certain circumstances. If you set up a body which is the same body, effectively doing the same job as the
That's the
previous
old one.
body, there are certain liabilities which can carry over. I haven't looked it up. I don't care enough in that
Mm,
to that degree, and really, it just comes down to government money or other people's money or Americans' money and that type of thing. There is. It's not as tidy as you would like. It's
mm,
not just absolute line drawn. But where it brings us to is how do you get to the next stage? Now, I was at the game on Friday night when I was standing on the balcony when the news came out and it was on there. And I then spent 10 minutes trying to explain to my 77-year-old dad exactly what was going on.
mm. Yeah.
Um, and he's quite good at summing things up. And he just looked at me afterwards and said, "So this is a bit like Game of Thrones, isn't it? Basically, what happens next, and there are two ways forward.
Mm.
I've never watched Game of Thrones, but I've got an idea from the title as to kind of what it's about.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but there are two ways forward with it. One, there's yet another bun fight,
Mm,
right, between stakeholders.
mm,
And those stakeholders now will be the national basketball federations,
mm,
that's England, Wales, and Scottish basketball, and the government, which is DCMS and UK Sport, effectively, and Sport England, who are the kind of the funding bodies, and then the SLB and potentially the BCB as well, the second tier clubs. They're all kind of different stakeholders in this, and they could end up having a bun fight, and they could end up going to all basically arguing for their particular bit of pie with the government about this is how it should be, and we want it like this, and we want it like that, and unfortunately we know on all sides up until now there has been a degree of pig-headedness,
mm,
a degree of stubbornness. And my view has always been that's primarily been because of the bad faith exemplified by the governing body.
mm,
And I don't see how you respond to bad faith with anything other than being stubborn to fight your corner. So I don't criticise the SLB for that. But what I do say is, well, hang on, they're not there anymore now. The whole landscape has changed now. Um, you now have a license from FIBA. You're now going to exist. Okay. Goodness knows what's in it, but you have something there you can rely on to say that this is what it's all about. This is how you're going to run the league. Okay. So now what we're talking about is pretty purely the national team program
mm,
because the league's security is established. And if it's the national team program, then it is incumbent on everybody to get together to run it properly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And now that mean now what that always comes down to, Dan, that always comes down to money.
Mm,
Because basically the money that um, comes through FIBA or through DCMS or through even through SLB, who knows, to run these programs, these events, has to be spent by somebody.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And so where the bun fight comes is, if we end up with a situation where, the home nations end up at loggerheads with the professional clubs, then we'll be right in saying, or we'll be entitled to say, well, maybe it wasn't all the BBF after all.
Mm,
And in relation to the professional clubs, we have some, as I say, up until now, I think fairly justifiably, but we have some justifiably forthright people in there, and many of them are from west of here
mm,
and west of these islands,
mm,
where there is a slightly different culture in relation to litigation, and these are the people who put their money up to run clubs to keep the league going, who will have their aspects and their point of view as to how it should be done. But now is the time that everybody needs to understand everybody else's position.
mm.
And anybody who's going to come out, I don't know this is going to happen. I don't know. I assume there's lots of stuff going on in the background. But anybody who's going to come out and start making demands or look at me, I'm here, all of this stuff, they're not wanted. This has to be about getting together. It has to be about conciliation. It has to be
Yeah.
about figuring out how do we run this so everybody works, and
Some of,
what are we
yeah,
willing to give up, and what do we need? What are our red lines?
yeah.
And then you got to get together, and then you got to present something to the government and say, this is how we're going to do it.
Mm.
Because then we won't have the government mandating and dumping stuff on us.
Well,
Like we always have.
therein is the question is whether the government are in that mode or whether they want to mandate and control.
Yeah.
And historically, that's been the methodology that's been used. Um, but I suppose
This is the first
the
time we've never had anything since 2006, is it? It's the
yeah,
first
yeah,
vacuum we've had
yeah, yeah, yeah,
whereby something needs to be filled.
yeah,
And so I would be desperately hoping that the more moderate individuals within the SLB, the more sensible individual, there's a new basketball England chief executive, I think, or temporary chief executive. I hope that they're bringing in people from Scotland. I hope they're bringing in people from Wales, and I hope they are genuinely having an organized chat,
yeah.
more than a chat. I hope they're putting together
And I hope
proposals so they can
I
go to the government and say, this is how
yeah.
we're going to run our sport.
Yeah, and I hope because I'm slightly less skeptical. I'm slightly more skeptical by the sounds of it than you in terms of
Yeah.
the government listening to that.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm maybe I'm doing them a disservice. Um,
I
I'm
just think,
hoping
sorry,
that
Dan, just on that, I
yeah,
hear what you say about that. It just seems to me that now, if there's ever going to be a time when
yeah,
everything else has failed,
yeah.
no, if you don't try now, when's it ever
When
going
will
to,
you? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, go on.
But I suppose my hope is that the government appoint somebody of a conciliatory nature, whoever that is, or a
Mm.
board of people, however the structure ends up being set up, that actually their task is to bring people in together, to find the commonality and the common ground. Because I think one thing that this uh, will give people within the sport is that actually this is a moment that we have to try and do something together and try and pull together because there have been many times you and I can list them back where it's been internal things even the last 18 months of fighting against each other and actually this is the point at which, as you say, now that we've got a new whatever the new thing is at the top, however that's laid out, it's beholden on everybody to try and pull it all back together and try and actually do what should have happened in 2006.
Yeah,
In
absolutely.
2006, we had a golden opportunity to we had this new British performance basketball organization before they were before they became the official federation thing. We had the home countries who'd had to it's sort of been pulled in, not necessarily uh, uh, happily, but it was through the mechanism of the Olympics that we'd had this all pulled together. There was a load of money thrown at it through UK sport. There was a few sponsors along the way as well who were interested in the standard life. I think was the early one in terms of interested in the whole Olympic thing and pull it all together. And unfortunately, what happened is we got external people in who come in, didn't know, just went, you lot are all rubbish, kind of ignored it, went off and did their own thing and ran until the money ran out, which was 2012, basically 2013. And then suddenly went, oh, well, actually, maybe we should do something together because they realized that they'd done nothing together to that point. So they had no sustainability. And it's almost like we're at 2006 again. Can we get it right this time? But without the carrot of the Olympics and without the money that comes from the cycle of having a home Olympics where UK sport and the government are going to throw uh, a small enough chunk of the 300 million that they spend on the Olympics towards a team sport that they're otherwise not interested in.
Yeah, and from that perspective, there's also a need now because the commercial situation in all sports is so different now, 20 years on.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
Um, but you looked at our Americans have come into the SLB with the idea of making money. Let's
Mm,
be clear, they don't, yeah, get involved with the sport and all that stuff, but they're looking at thinking this sport takes off. We continue to develop it. Richer people, NBA Europe's on its way. Richer people will be attracted. Our franchises grow in value. That's the way the model's worked in America. That's the way it can work here. So there has to be an acceptance that we can't be relying on those handouts
mm,
forever.
mm,
Now, the biggest thing that we have at the moment is that I can't say this enough. The license is off the table.
mm,
FIBA basically taken over that process.
mm,
So the SLB and the professional clubs have every now. So that's there. So therefore, we're in a situation where we're looking at national governing bodies, and the reason we have a British Basketball Federation is primarily because of the Olympics, isn't it? Because
it
otherwise
is.
it would be England, Scotland, and Wales.
Yeah,
But to
yeah.
compete in the Olympics, or it's unlike football. FIBA is not going to give us a cutout for England, Scotland, and Wales to play in national competition or Eurobasket. It has to be Great Britain because that's the Olympic team. Therefore, we have to have a supranational organisation on top of what we've already got,
Mm,
and that's proved itself to be unworkable. Despite we have the Scottish and the Welsh and English federations, English basketball organisations who get grant money from Sport England and Sport Scotland, and I'm guessing Sport Wales to run their kind of community programs, but they've never had to run events, right? So where we need to be with all of this, right? Everybody needs to understand everybody else's remit and the extent of their expertise.
mm,
Okay. Now, from my perspective, and this is spitballing a little bit, but Basketball England, whoever they are, Basketball Scotland, whoever is going to be taking over the lead kind of organizer for international games, for instance, they need to contract them out. They need to contract them out to the pro clubs, the SLB, who know what they're doing to
mm,
get people in the gym. Tickets, who have ticket apparatus, who have people around, kind of a bigger, more official version of what they've been doing with the Eagles over the past 7 years, or the past
mm, mm.
seven home games,
And let's be
four
fair,
years.
they used to do that years ago.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
used to be through
exactly.
the
And they need to,
BBL
and they need
deals.
to, and that needs to be that because well, I think we only have two. I think only the Cotton Box and the Virtual Motors Arena are actually level one qualified arenas, other than the O2, etc.,
Mm,
for Eurobasket men's games at the moment. Anyway, but we can try and develop some more, whatever. But they need to say, no, this isn't our bag. This isn't what we do, right? So they need to push that to one side and say, look, okay, we'll go that way. But um in exchange for that, and some benefit for there, what is it that the SLB clubs and the BCB clubs potentially can do in relation to promoting British players, in relation to tightening up eligibility regulations, etc. Where is the quid pro quo in all of this?
mm,
Okay, where is it coming from? And that's why everybody needs to start being sensible.
mm,
Okay, because nobody can run a basketball event in this country as well as Andy and the SRB clubs can.
mm,
But similarly, there are flaws within the construction of the league and the governments of the league at times, which can properly be fixed better,
mm.
right? No question. And everybody has to come to the table with that in mind, being aware of their own weaknesses and everybody else's benefit. And then it's just a question of divvying up the cake and divvying up the cake so everybody understands what it is.
Mm,
And everybody can live with that, and we're all pulling together. And it frustrates the hell out of me that I'm not sure that's going to happen.
mm, mm,
And that because that isn't hard, Dan.
mm,
You know, it isn't, what you need is the right mindset coming in. And of course, the risk is that people are so desperate and are so now used to fighting their own corner because they have to, because it's survival, whether it's basketball England worrying we're going to lose £150,000 worth of grant, and therefore we'll lose some jobs, or whether it's SLB clubs saying, well, we're going to lose these amount of home games and we're going to lose some jobs. Everybody's so busy pushing for what they need that nobody appreciates what everybody else needs. And it's a great opportunity. And from I know what you say about the government invest. I don't think there's anybody in the government who knows enough about this as much as the people who work for Basketball England, the people who work for the SLB, the people on the outside of it,
mm,
who are technically on the outside of both organisations, like Sam Neater, Mark Clark, whatever. Okay, people who around basketball. Obviously, then there's I mean, I put me and you in that as well, and a few others, and find a way of pulling all the loose strings and tightening them all up so that moving forward, everybody can be proud of
mm,
the national teams that we've got.
mm,
And I just hope, you know, it sounds a bit idealistic, because I think if they're able to present, this is the time to present a fait accompli to the government and say this is how we all think it can work.
mm,
Because if the bodies involved do not think it can work, then we're just going to have another review, another independent person come in who doesn't know anything, who's going to listen to four different sides of the same argument again, can come up with an unwieldy and ineffective compromise, and the sport will have no one to blame but itself.
mm.
It's a bit sad, isn't it? So
It is a
yeah,
bit
so Game
sad.
of Thrones, Game of Thrones continues.
Mm, mm,
But let's just have some realism, please, from everybody. That's my view. Sorry, I've talked a lot there, and you,
mm,
you know a lot about this stuff too.
mm. But I've had enough of it. I don't want to carry
Yeah,
on.
fair enough.
So we'll move to some basketball instead. I'm sure we'll come back to this at some point in the not too distant future.
Quite
This
ironic,
has
isn't it,
been
that no one
sensible.
resigned and they're still all irrelevant. I put that on
Yeah,
Facebook,
yeah.
really, that was the one thing that got to me,
Mm,
Um, you literally liquidated a body which is not liquidated yet, but will be liquidated a body which is dependent entirely on handouts. How does that work?
mm.
I mean, just on any,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know,
Doesn't make any sense.
beyond. I mean, this is not administration whereby yourself because there's no assets.
No.
So it goes straight to liquidation. It's like
Yeah.
we don't exist anymore.
Well, if they have any assets, they're not allowed to sell them.
If they're not only selling, yeah,
Yeah,
they was,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, right, let's talk basketball. Start on Friday night. Bristol Flyers 103, Caledonia Gladiators 94. McCormack was back for the Fly. Spielman was back for Caledonia. Andrew Gordon was in for his debut. Williams is gone. No longer on the milk
Yeah,
bottle
we know where he's not.
chart. Yeah, we know where he's
Yeah.
not. Um, Johnny called a timeout after a minute and 13 seconds in this one
Yeah.
as Joachim scored the first 5 points of the game. It was actually pretty even until Delpesh scored seven in a row to lead 24 16, but then Ragsdale 8 points in a row to tie it at
Yeah. I mean,
24. Oh, and there was no foul for the first 8 minutes of the game, Dave.
yeah, I
Eight
saw that.
minutes, no
Yeah.
foul.
Yeah, and that kind of fitted with the game because it really was a little bit netbally at times. There was a
Mm,
lot of offense,
mm,
a lot of good offense, a lot of nice spacing, a lot of good shooting. Bristol are a pretty team, not facially, but a pretty team in the way that they space the court, the way that they move the ball, and the way that they know where the ball needs to go. They're a really efficient offensive team, primarily, I think, coming from the IQ um, of Anderson, of Joe Anderson and Holden. Holden's IQ is it's a bit weird because Holden sometimes goes off on one, and
mm,
you think, oh, what's he doing? But offensively, he knows where he wants the ball, and he's he's quite efficient in, when they're in trouble, how he can get the basketball on the post. Then you brought McCormack back, and McCormack was knocking down shots as well, so they're all in nice rhythm, and they're all enjoying themselves. And we've had a few games with Caledonia like that this season.
Mm,
The one that they won at Surrey was similar, except they won it because Surrey weren't quite as offensively ready as they were. And it was a game whereby, even though Ragsdale was basically making every shot that mattered,
mm.
Bristol weren't that bothered because they were still making every shot that mattered down the other end.
Yeah, yeah.
And I never got the impression, even when they came back from 15 in the
Mm,
third quarter, I never got the impression that Caledonia could get enough stops
mm.
to stay ahead.
Well, Bristol scored 11 without reply in the second quarter. They had a spell where they made 5 3-pointers in 3.5 minutes and led 47-33. Brody hobbled out of the game in the third quarter, straight to the
Yeah.
locker room. He appeared to have landed on somebody's foot a play or two earlier. He did briefly come back, but didn't play in the fourth quarter. They were actually 17 down, Caledonia, but they went on a 15-1 run in the third quarter to close it to 63-60, and even took the lead on a right three-pointer just before the end of the quarter. But McCormack scored 5 in a row. Bristol back up to 84-78, and in the last couple of minutes they had an 8-0 run to seal the win.
Yeah, and we've done enough of these games to know that these games generally favour the home team.
Mm,
When you get the home team is comfortable in its own gym and is ready to make plays at the end, and you never felt, um, as I say, you give up 103 on the road. It's rare you're going to win.
mm,
They gave up 30 points in the fourth quarter, and even though they probably played close to their best offensive game, Caledonia, and they shot 52% from three. Just having a quick look here, their splits were 59,
mm.
52, and
I've got
84.
a stat on that.
Yeah, oh,
I've got
I'll
an
leave that to you.
unbelievable stat on that, Dave.
Oh, sorry, Dad.
I was really excited to share it with you, Dave,
Oh, okay, well, I'll
when I
shut up.
discovered it last night.
Oh, sure. And to lose a game when you've shot the ball so well,
Mm,
is difficult. But you could see it coming because ultimately, they gave up 20. What they gave up 11 offensive rebounds, and Bristol had 29 assists and 9 turnovers.
mm,
That's a scary number. I mean,
mm,
Caledonia 17 to 22 to 17, but
mm,
29 assists, 9 turnovers. That means your defense isn't getting it done.
mm,
Um, so yeah, interesting that they brought Gordon in.
mm,
I'm not sure that backup centre was their biggest hole, if I'm honest. I understand why they wanted someone to back up Alan because the concept of Alan playing 32 minutes a game throughout the season is going to be tough, and Carr is only a young lad who's just learning, and they don't really have another big body.
mm,
Like Spielman's the four, and he's probably an undersized four. After that, it's like Fraser Malcolm and co. And Toto, we're not quite sure what he is. So I kind of get why they brought in a five, but it's he almost looks like he's the opposite of Allen insofar as he's far more defensive minded. He blocked two and nearly blocked a third shot in this game. He only played like 12 minutes. But I still see it kind of a bigger hole for them on the wing, to be honest, because they've got three effective little guards in Holland, Wright, and Ragsdale, who are all our American spots, and then two centres in Allen and Gordon, and that means they're asking a lot, out of Spielman and a lot out of Fagbenley,
mm,
and in fact, Benley, offensively, he's still really struggling.
mm.
And in a 103-94 game, you can't have a guy who goes 22 minutes and has 2 points. He's minus 11. So, yeah. So, Anya, come on, tell us about the stats.
Let me give the scorers first. Joachim 4 of 5 for 3 for 20 points. McCormack 5 of 6 for 3 for 19 points. Anderson 16 points. Zach Anderson
Yeah.
16 of 33 from 3-point range. Ragsdale 29 points, 12 of 17 shooting, 5 of 7 from 3-point range. Wright 5 of 9 from 3-point range, 9 of 13 overall. And Allen 15 points and 8 rebounds. They were 13 of 25 from 3-point range. What do we know about Bristol, Dave? What do we always say about Bristol? Them rims, they're hard to shoot on, aren't they?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, this game, the combined free field goal percentage was 55% 58.1. There have been 221 games at the Wise, Dave. That is the highest combined field goal shooting percentage ever. The 3 point percentage was 50%, which ties the highest ever 3 point shooting percentage at the Wise, which was also against the Rocks in April 2015. But that one was 24 of 48. This one was 29 of 58. So I'm
Yeah.
taking that to be the tiebreaker. And
Yeah.
this was the greatest ever shooting game at the Wise.
Wow, that's a great stat. And I mean, there's two things that come into that, isn't there? The first is that teams are better, shooters are better now because
Mm.
because it's there's a lot more there's more spacing on the court. And secondly, maybe the teams at Bristol haven't been that good at shooting before. And to be fair, if I'm going back, I don't remember that many kind of snipe. I don't remember many teams like this at Bristol.
Mm.
Andreas has been in the league 10 years now. Obviously, the first 2 or 3 years, they were kind of just developing, just kind of getting into it. The other guy called Doug McLaughlin Williams, who
Yeah,
was
yeah.
hard. But yeah, they always had their bigs were, was Dan Adozie was there, and he
Mm.
was never going to scare you from the 3 point line.
No.
Leslie Smith, Del Peshers, again, they were playing, a lot of five out, a lot of four out. Now suddenly, when you've got, McCormack in there, that becomes a whole different world,
Mm.
whole different world of guarding. So yeah, so I think that's probably something to do with it. And I don't think ultimately they're not the most Bristol this year aren't the most physical defensive team. That's not their identity.
Mm.
Um, they haven't. So Ragsdale and Wright got far too many open looks in this game. If you as a coach you'd really want, but when you're in a rhythm going the other way, you can kind of live with that because
Yeah, yeah.
you're keeping ahead.
Yeah. Let's go to the other game. Newcastle Eagles 95, Sheffield Sharks 99. No Anthony or Canway for Newcastle. Malcolm Smith was back on the live stats, but he didn't play.
Yeah, he
Uh,
was warming up.
and obviously, no Nixon or James. Really not much in this early on. Threes from Candy and Long gave Eagles a 5 point lead at the end of the quarter, but that was actually the biggest lead of the
Yeah, I mean,
opening 10 minutes.
a couple of things really. That immediately came out of it. Firstly, it was Newcastle's best offensive opening quarter of the season by quite a long way, and the reason for that is that they played through Okafor to start with, gave him the ball in the post a couple of times, and then you got kind of kick out. You got a kick out to somebody else for a three, and it actually gave them a focal point because they've had very little interior scoring this year. So that was kind of a positive improvement from the Eagles' perspective. Sheffield were really an interesting case study because obviously when you take out somebody who uses as many possessions as Nixon does, it changes everybody's roles slightly.
Mm,
And by the end, I think you could probably say it probably changed a few of their roles for the better. It promoted some of the other guys. In particular, it meant that Dirk Williams could move more.
mm,
And because he's not kind of the three man who's standing in the corner watching Nixon and Chapman at the top. So Williams is able to move and get active and get open. And I think that helps him get into rhythm. He's not real. He can shoot the ball, but he's not just a standstill shooter. He's far different to that we've seen over the years. And obviously it opens up a lot more touches for Kern as well coming off the bench. So those two things made a difference. But overall, I thought a pretty well played first half. Um, as I say, for Newcastle, the ball was moving a lot more. Um, they started probably the most talented group. They started Taylor, and he hadn't
mm,
started Taylor for the past few weeks. And then even got, as you see, Candy was in. Candy came in early when Long missed a couple of assignments, knocked down a couple of threes, got a rebound. And so the energy with the group that's been together for like the last 9 days and hadn't had a game was quite palpable. So it was a fun game to watch. Um, and for Sheffield, Newcastle had, and I don't think they'll be the only team this year, but and I'm rather frustrated at the game he had yesterday because it rather spoils what I'm going to say about him today. Chapman was just not guardable,
mm.
and Newcastle never got to grips with Chapman at all in the game. But overall, yeah, the game kind of turned on a slightly bad refereeing decision.
So let me
Actually
let me
went
get let me
against
get to that.
Sheffield, but then
Yeah, yeah.
went, benefited them.
So Eagles with a 10-2 run to lead by 9 just before halftime. Then 2.5 minutes into the third quarter, Deloach was called for an unsportsmanlike foul after a turnover. He seems to like that bounce pass between the legs instead of a handoff. In real time, watching this, I thought the foul was called on Dirk because Dirk was the other side.
I thought that too when
So
I was on the other side of the gym, but I thought it was Dirk to start with. But go
So
on.
I wasn't sure how it was called an unsportsmanlike because Dirk is in front of him and
Yeah.
it's just a collision. So I was slightly confused at that. But I'm guessing that they must have deemed that Deloach had not legitimately attempted to directly play the ball within the spirit or the intent of the rules, as it says. And he was given an unsportsmanlike, and that matters because just before half time, he'd got a questionable charge called against him when Defoe looked to be going to the ground and got a technical for complaining. So
Yeah, well, I'm going to be
unsportsmanlike
very
and
kind to Darius and say that he may have lost his balance.
yeah,
But yeah, it was an awful call. And then Deloach got a technical. What I will say about Deloach was the very first play of the game, he should have got a technical because he blocked Okafor
mm,
right in front of me, literally 4 feet away from me, having blocked him, turned round and basically shouted in his face, an obvious taunting technical.
yeah,
So I'm not entirely on the Deloach bandwagon, but the ones he got for that was unfortunate, and for the Defoe thing was unfortunate because it was kind of a feature of the game. Referees quite often compounded their errors
mm,
in this game. We'll talk about a little bit about that later. Um, but you know, by that point, you know, Sheffield were fraying a little bit, and they were getting probably the wrong end of the whistle for the first 3 quarters of this game.
mm,
And the Deloach thing in particular, I can only think that I haven't watched it back. I can only think that maybe the ref saw maybe a grab of the shirt.
mm,
Other than that, I can't, you know, because then long went down. But the problem was the ref called it and then spent 10 seconds without even telling us who's called it on.
yeah,
He put his
yeah,
fist up in the air and thought, oh, what have I called there?
mm,
You know, and it was so palpable. And that's
mm,
just not, obviously you don't have replays, so it's hard on them, but that's just not really acceptable at this level because then, you know, Deloach had to go. That, however, actually, there were a number of things which helped Sheffield. One of the things remarkably was that actually helped Sheffield because it meant that Lee could play the five. And
mm,
Lee is at the moment playing a lot better at the five spot than he is the four spot, which is clearly a team has picked up because he started him at the five in the game on Sunday.
mm.
Um, it meant he could play the five. It also, I think, that Sheffield will also help by having been through some of this rubbish over the past few weeks
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because it, whereas at Cheshire, um, they kind of they floundered a little bit, albeit it's difficult not to flounder when you get caught for fouls in 13 consecutive possessions.
Mm,
They did flounder a little bit and they lost their cool. In this game, I think they've obviously had the chance to address that and talk about that and how we deal with it and look, it's going to be bad, etc.
mm,
And in this game, I thought because they had fewer players and because um, they had a little bit of adversity to deal with that call and a couple of other calls around that time in the third quarter. I thought it brought them together.
mm,
And playing with Lee as the centre opened them up a little bit like playing with McCormick at the centre does for Bristol, except Lee is obviously also a lob threat too.
mm,
And Newcastle, by the they got out to 12 or 13, I don't think they saw the danger.
mm.
And they ended up running with Sheffield and started. Um, and the biggest part of the game was about I think Newcastle were up near the 9 or 10 with 2 minutes to go in the third quarter.
13. It was up 13 and there was a 9-0 run around the final break to cut
Yeah.
it to
And what was the
74,
biggest thing
72.
about that, Dan? The biggest thing about that was when Chapman was on the bench.
Yeah,
And I said to my dad next to us at that point, they have to win the game now,
yeah,
or you have to get Chapman back in the game now. This
yeah.
is the chance. You're up 13, you're up 12. Chapman's on the bench. They're basically running Glasgow and Kern um, and Dirk. All of that. Some Dirk played 38 minutes in this game, so he's in the rhythm. He's not coming out, you see. But they didn't. And then at the beginning of the fourth quarter, Newcastle got kind of caught. The refs caught up a little bit with Newcastle, and they called 3 or 4 very quick fouls to get them in the penalty. And then there was a technical that was really
So, so
technical and
start of
stupid.
the fourth quarter in that 9-0 run, there was also some free throws. Ocherobia got his hands on the ball after a score. Had they been warned before? Because Mark was screaming for a
He
delay of
wasn't shooting
game
for a
kick,
technical. He was saying what he was basically.
held the ball.
He shouted twice at Angus Bankovic across the court. Delay of game, delay of
Yeah,
game.
yeah,
And it was a delay game. I mean, on the basis of what everybody is, if you catch the ball and you throw it to somebody,
yeah,
unfortunately, it's not the just hit
yeah.
you.
By
So it wouldn't
rules,
have been a technical, it wouldn't have been a foul shot, but he's
uh,
shouting that, and
yeah,
and, and Dingus Bankovic obviously decides that's too much, and unfortunately, that's what I'm talking about compounding an error. If you make the right call first place, that's when you need to close your ears.
yeah,
Because fortunately, the coach is right, and he's not swearing at you. I know he's not swearing because he was staring straight at me when he said this stuff.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
can know exactly what he said. But ultimately, um, that point might matter, might not matter. But as I say, Sheffield had a pretty tough crack early on.
and then the
What it
next
meant
play,
was that they got in the penalty. Sorry.
yeah, the next play down, Clark got a technical for flopping when both he and Kern ended up on the floor, which
Yeah, I
was
thought that was again. I
harsh.
thought that was a little bit harsh. I
Yeah,
mean,
it looked harsh to me
Kern,
as well.
yeah, Kern. I mean, ultimately, I mean, when somebody is flying at you at the speed that Kern did, and
Mm,
Clark is moving backwards at that
mm,
point because he has to try and stay in front of him. Man, to say that he's deliberately falling over
yeah.
is a bit difficult, I think.
And they both ended up on the floor.
Both,
That's the thing.
it's,
So it's
it's
like,
like that again. That's a no call.
yeah,
If it's not a block or a charge, it's a no call.
yeah,
Because of one thing on the floor. So yeah, so at that point, yeah, Eagles. But the biggest thing was they're in the penalty.
mm,
And that meant that their defense really struggled in the fourth quarter, and they stopped switching as much, and Sheffield got into a rhythm. And then the biggest part of the game was basically 4 minutes to go. Taylor had four fouls, and one of the reasons Taylor had four fouls was because with 3 seconds to go in the second quarter, he picked up a silly foul, a
mm,
deliberate foul, to stop the clock, but they were in the penalty.
mm,
A
yeah,
deliberate kind of half-court foul,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
fast
yeah,
break, but they're in the penalty. So
yeah,
it doesn't accomplish anything. It just gives them two foul shots.
yeah,
And he knew he'd made a mistake when he did it because I saw his face. But that was his second foul. So by the end of but he gets a slightly dodgy call beginning the fourth quarter. Then he's got four fouls, and so still has to sit him down. He, I think, has to be Newcastle's leader on that team. I don't see anybody else who is going to be their leader in the end of games. And then it's a question of when do you bring him back?
mm,
And Mark clearly decided he's going to bring him back at the 4 minute mark.
mm,
It's a little bit too late for me because of exactly what happened,
mm.
which was that he was sat at the table at the 4 minute 20 mark, and he came in at the 1 minute 40 mark when they were
Yeah,
down
yeah,
7.
yeah, yeah. So while he was sat there, Eagles were up two with 3:11 to go. Cohen with six and an 11-0 run to make it 83-92 with a minute to go. And I think that was the point he came
But the
back in.
game turned. I mean, basically, Clark made a three, and Clark is actually the best plus minus guy, and he's quite, I quite like it. I like his game, but like I've said previously, he's not the guy you want to have the ball with 2 minutes to go, with 8 seconds to go on the shot clock, saying, "Please go make a play, Mitch."
Mm,
And they ran a um, they ran a little curl play, and he got to the basket. He missed a bunny, missed a
mm,
left-handed layup, and down the other end came Kern and made a layup at the other end.
mm.
And at that point, I think Mark Stewart had used two timeouts, so he didn't want to use his last one.
Yeah.
I think he should have, because next play down, Newcastle's offense goes to crap basically. They stop moving the ball, turn it over. I took up an awful shot to get to three in the corner.
Mm,
At that point, Mark looks up, calls a timeout, but the ball's already in play, so he
mm,
doesn't get it. So another disaster on offense, another layup at the other end. It's a 7 point game. There's 1 minute 40 to go, and your guy Taylor now gets in the game.
mm,
And you needed Taylor, and Clark was running on fumes.
mm,
So little things make a big difference. And I thought at that time, Taylor just had to be in that game a little bit earlier,
mm.
just to make sure that you don't end up in a situation where the game is being lost whilst he's sat on the bench waiting to get in.
Yeah. I'll tell you who was ready, Eric, with that backup shirt there when
Oh,
Dion
he was
ripped his
sharp.
shirt
Yeah,
like that. He was ready.
got three
Uh,
jobs. Yeah.
Eagles were down nine with 30 seconds to go, but Clark three, Kern threw the ball straight out of bounds from a sideline, which actually meant they couldn't get Clark back in the game. They were doing defense for offense, but because he
Yeah.
threw it out of bounds, they couldn't sub him back in because
Yeah.
he'd come out on that play. And then Hammond then made it 92-95 with 19 seconds to go. Chapman two free throws, and even though Kern missed a couple, Jack made a three, cut it to two, but there wasn't enough.
Yeah, I mean they tried a little bit to lose Sheffield because
Yeah,
I
they
think
did a little
because
bit.
even on the nine, I think Okafor made a three and was in that time and got fouled for a 4 point play when they
Yeah,
were
he did. Yeah,
in.
yeah.
And then he missed the foul. He missed the foul shot, and they got a kick out to Hammond for a three, which if he'd made could have really changed the complexion. And
Mm,
as you say, they turned it over. But Sheffield's interesting because, I think it's difficult to say anything other than the fact that they look more fluent without Nixon.
mm,
And there's 3 or 4 games now. It's certainly a question of getting the ball back, getting everybody back playing, and therefore as they get used to each other, they're going to be that way. But, this time last year or the end of last year, we had some pretty, high level point guards in the league,
mm,
right? You had Hunter at Leicester, we had Pulliam at Newcastle, you had Peterson at London, you had Ashton Langford at Manchester.
mm,
Obviously, Chapman was injured at that point, but McGill was at Sheffield. And probably, and even Cameron Gooden sorry, every team had a point guard. You thought, oh, we got to guard him, right? Um, I think London guy's out now. I think Chapman's a different level now.
mm,
And I thought that on Friday night before what happened on Sunday.
mm.
And this game, he had 17 points and 14 assists in 24 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
And you just felt that he could get anywhere he wanted to get on the court. And the only thing that's going to and because Glasgow plays far more off the ball than Nixon,
Mm,
that gives him more room to operate. He's not kind of playing one offense and two. And it also means that Dirk starts moving. And when Dirk starts moving, he becomes extremely dangerous because
mm,
you can kind of guard somebody in the corner when they just stood there, but he is so quick coming off screens. And he gets into a rhythm, and he got into a rhythm in this game, and that's why they won it because he had 33 points in the fourth quarter, and he was 6 of 10 from the 3 point line.
mm,
And Dirk is given his resume outside of London, he is probably the most talented player in the league.
mm,
France Pro A, and unlocking him is key to them.
mm,
Now, as I say, the difficulty is when James comes in, when Nixon comes in, the whole look of the team is going to shift again,
mm,
and there's going to be less touches, and there's less touches means less connection to the game. Um, so we'll see how that goes. But I thought Chapman was just the only thing that's going to get in Chapman's way is Chapman.
mm,
If he keeps his head clear, and there were a couple of times he was a bit, you could see in a couple of the refs' calls where he was looking, oh, really, what are we doing here? But provided he kind of takes it personal, if he's in this league, you're going to play in this league, you're going to win this league, you're going to win as many games as you can in this league. If he does that, they're going to be really tough. Newcastle, Okafor, massive upgrade. 21 points, 14 rebounds in his third game. Um, Still, a little bit flawed at the end. The ball doesn't move the way it needs to. They don't have a Dirk or a Chapman who knew that it was his time to have the ball. If it was going to be Taylor, and he hasn't proven it can be him yet, he wasn't on the court. So, they look like a team who'd kind of forgotten how to win at the end.
mm, mm,
Um, I still quite like I like their upgrade in talent level. With Okafor, with Jack, even Hammond had some open shots in this game, and he managed to even rip his shirt in frustration at one point, which hopefully will get him a fine. On the basis that we have to buy another shirt.
mm,
So their talent level is there. The question is do they have enough in the way of leadership
mm,
to really win the close games? And the final thing I'm going to raise, and I'm going to have to raise it, is because I'm in no way attribute that game to the refs. I thought Sheffield handled their adversity very well, and I thought Newcastle struggled a little bit in the fourth quarter. Um, but it turns out that one of the refs, remarkably, um, the young lad who I'd not seen before, um, is actually a player as well.
mm,
And following night was playing for Sheffield's second team
mm,
against Myerscough in Division One. And that was pointed out to me by a Sheffield correspondent, not a Newcastle correspondent.
mm, mm,
And I'm not suggesting in any way that impacted on the result, but what are we doing?
mm,
I would say kind of what's he doing, but he's probably too young to know better the horrendous position he placed himself in that game. And that's the ref who gave Deloach his unsportsmanlike.
mm,
Right, so as I say, I'm not casting any aspersions, albeit I have to say I don't think he was up to it. But then again, I don't think any of the young lads who are being thrown in at the deep end in relation to games of a very high level are up to it. But who's vetting this stuff? You know, He's put himself in an awful position there, and whoever has put him in there has also has has basically let him down.
Mm,
Um, just this is why governance is so important. Because if something had gone the other way, can you imagine if there's a last
mm,
second call
mm,
and you make it genuinely? Can I mean, literally, it just it beggars kind of belief, really.
mm,
So again, now to do with the game, Sheffield deserved to win the basketball game. Probably got the rough end of the call, certainly up to the fourth quarter. Um, but the governance and this needs to be sorted out because you can't. It becomes bush league. It becomes I've already had, we had last week, we had Rob shouting over it from Leicester, shouting over at the Cheshire table officials because of what happened at Cheshire the week before,
mm,
because, possibly fueled by stuff I'm saying about who's appointing these people,
mm,
because in sport, in basketball in particular, the officials have such a critical impact on the game that their integrity and their impartiality cannot in any way be susceptible to any form of challenge
mm,
because it destroys the credibility and ethos of the game. And that's even if, and I'm quite certain that even if there is no quote marks favoritism,
mm,
it just becomes it needs sorting done.
mm.
It
It
needs
does.
sorting.
Mm,
And now there's no reason not to sort it
mm,
because the SLB has a license with FIBA.
mm,
And so anybody who's a highly qualified referee who isn't refereeing is doing it one assumes is doing it out of their own choice.
mm. Okafor 21 points, 13 rebounds. I've got
13, sorry.
4 assists. Taylor 16 points and 5 assists, 5 of 7 field goals. Long 5 of 8 field goals for 15 points. Derek Williams 6 of 10 from 3-point range, 26 points, 7 rebounds. Cohen 24 points and 8 rebounds. Chapman 17 points, 14 assists and 6
And
rebounds.
just from Newcastle's perspective, Chapman did that in 24, 25 minutes because he got two fouls early in the second quarter and he sat down for much of the second quarter, which is when Newcastle extended their lead.
Mm,
You have to take away one or the other. You can't give him if he's gonna you can't give him 14 assists and 17 points. He can have 6 assists, he can have 6 points and 14 assists,
yeah.
or he can have 25 points and 3 assists, but he
Mm,
cannot have 17 points and 14 assists because
mm,
everybody is getting what they want then.
yeah. Yeah.
And they didn't decide that well enough.
Let's go to Sunday, Dave. Full disclosure, these first 2 games tipped off
Mm.
basically at the exact moment that Troy Parrott Studs got on the end of the Ian Scales knockdown. So at that moment in time, I was lamenting my life choices, that I wasn't spending the rest of the evening in Duffy's bar drinking creamy
Yeah, until you
pints.
get beat in the playoffs.
And instead, I was trying to watch 2 SLB games whilst preparing for a
Yeah.
third.
What
So,
about
so
Thierry Henry?
well, don't. We'll have another 2 hours if we get into Thierry Henry. We will get knocked out in the playoffs because we always do. But we've had our little moment,
I mean, yeah,
now of 2 games in a row. And the long distant memory of Armenia away is washed away. But my focus to detail in
yeah, it was
these
not great.
games
I get that.
is suboptimal.
Yeah,
So you'll have to pick me up on the stuff that I didn't see happen. Fortunately, they were both blowouts, so
yeah,
I don't
they
think I
were.
missed too much in it all. Sheffield Sharks 98, Manchester Basketball 79. Duke Shelton signed for Manchester but didn't play. Obviously, Sheffield's still short-handed, although they had plenty of old dudes in the crowd. They could have
Yeah, I
pulled
saw that.
Richard
Yeah,
Windle out or something,
yeah.
or Garnet Gale or Todd
That's
Cawthorne, I think.
Hawthorne could probably
Yeah,
still play. I bet he could
yeah,
still set a screen.
yeah.
Um, yeah, good for Manchester putting an extra 10 minutes in all our podcasts at the end of the season by signing Duke, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned actually earlier William Lee starting at the 5, and he had 9 points in a 12-2 run as they led 19-8. Manchester did hit 10 in a row to cut it back to a
Yeah, I
point.
mean William Lee over the past 5 or 6 years, ever since his first year at Leicester, where he's basically a four, he plays a four permanently. He's kind of really been impactful as a five. He played at Manchester with Taj Green as well as the four, and he's one of those guys who seems to have purple patches.
Mm,
whereby for 4 or 5 weeks, I think he won Player of the Month in
Mm,
Manchester. I may be wrong. Early season. Well, like for 4 or 5 games, you think, my God, this guy's unplayable. Why is he here? He's 6'10", he can just 6'9", jump out the gym, make a 3-point shot.
mm,
He can block shots. He's there. And then kind of there's a drop off, or whether it's a mental thing or a physical thing, there's always been a drop off. But obviously, he played with Dirk at Manchester,
mm,
and obviously they've kind of maintained that relationship. But on his day, and I hate that phrase, but when he is at his best, he is a very difficult five-man to guard.
mm.
Um, and Chapman clearly likes playing with him because he can throw the ball above the rim. And I mean, this was Chapman's game, but it was also a game whereby kind of the paucity of Manchester's issues are really emphasised within this box score, Dan.
Mm,
Nicholson played 20 minutes, he didn't shoot the ball.
mm,
Now he's 7 foot centre. It's not his job to get his own shots.
mm.
It's other people's jobs to give him the ball.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? If he's not getting the ball, that's because they're not looking to throw the ball to him.
Mm,
Okay. Henry, no points on the wing. 0 of 7, I think.
mm,
Um, Three guards who basically like to shoot the ball.
mm,
And Johnson, 14 points in 15 minutes and positive plus minus, probably should have played a bit more. But those issues aren't gonna go away unless they find without Irving, they don't have people running the baseline, they don't have much in the way of interior scoring, and it becomes kind of a shootout. And at the moment, Chapman is better. Chapman and Williams in the way that Sheffield are running their offense with kind of the guys who don't need the ball but are still effective, like Coutinho, or better than the Manchester guys who are basically in attack mode all the time, but their shot selection, because the amount of shots they're putting up isn't great. I think the three guards put up over half of their shots.
well, the stat I've got, I'll give the stat when we get to the
Yeah.
points, but it was basically about the rest of the team not scoring. Um, so, Dirk Williams with a couple of threes in the second quarter capped a 15-0 run. They led 42-25. That was basically the ball game. Sheffield were 9 for 11 from 3 points in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, they're 3 point shooting, but they got the guys who shot the threes, the guys who meant to shoot the threes.
Mm,
Chapman, I think was 6 of 6, something like that.
mm,
Williams as well. If those guys are shooting the majority of their shots, then they're kind of doing okay. And I just don't get. I think the Manchester coach Matt Oughton, I think he has the right framework defensively. I think he knows what he wants them to do. I'm just think they're a bit young to do it. Um, he does make adjustments. You see different matchups, which make me think, I like that. In relation to putting bigs on smalls, etc. But they strike me as a talented, but at the moment not overly mature team. In particular, the three. I mean, Johnson is probably the purest of the guards. He's a pure point guard, but he's coming off the bench, and Jones is basically just in go mode.
mm.
And I'm going back 20 years here, and it's just popped into my head. But in a three American league, he would be James Life.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, about James
Worcester.
Life. James Life played at Worcester for a year.
Mm,
He was a 6'5" Californian guard, I think, and I don't think he top scored. Maybe he had a mate Paez who was top scorer, and I think he was
mm,
second top scorer in the league. But he could take and make every shot, and played with Harker and that. And there's more talent spread around now.
mm,
So you don't get to take all those shots, or if you do take all those shots, you better do it efficiently and you better get your teammates involved. And he's not getting his teammates involved enough
mm.
for me. So I'm not quite sure what they're going to do with Duke. He obviously playing through Osborne is fine, but you have to have if the game plan is to give the ball to Osborne, he's going to throw it to one of the guards who's going to shoot it, then eventually you're going to run out of something there. They don't have Irving running the baseline, and they'll get a bit of aggression out of Duke, but I'm not sure if they're not going to throw him the ball, it's not going to make a difference.
Mm, mm,
Sheffield, I mean Chapman was just, I mean that was an MVP level game. That was going back to the not just an MVP level game. That was, 35, whatever it was, and whatever it was, but he didn't miss a shot. But it was the way he got them. He was comfortable. The whole game, he was comfortable in where he was going. He knew when he could pass. He knew who he could drop the ball off to. It was just a consummate performance from him, and and they never looked like losing.
Highest individual tally of the season, Chapman, 35.7 rebounds, 6 assists. Williams, 8 for 11 shooting, 20 points. Lee, 7 of 7 shooting
Yeah.
for 16 points and 7 rebounds. They were 15 of 23 from 3 point range, 15 of 23.
And that's it, sorry, but that's a lot of those are Chapman and Williams. And, Chapman, you're either going to let him shoot the three and then, and live with the consequences, which is kind of what they did because he was getting them in drop coverage when he was just stepping to his left off a screen. But after he's made three, you got to change it up. You can't be getting those looks. And obviously Dirk is Dirk. There was one time in the fourth quarter, Kyle Cleary was doing his best to guard Dirk, and Dirk started kind of towards the baseline on the kind of the dunker spot. And the whole play was Chapman coming out to the wing and Dirk coming up off a screen at the top to catch the ball on the curl. And within like 12 feet of movement, Kyle Cleary was 7 feet behind him. Because Dirk's been around for so he knows how to get open. He's so quick on the move, and he's almost an NBA-like guy in relation to that. Doesn't have the size for the NBA, but his ability to move without the ball and catch the ball and get that shot off. Now, and it was all about mental because the very next play they did the same thing, and Kyle Cleary was stuck to him. So he figured it out, but he figured it out too late. And that's the thing that they get when they basically have only the one kind of dominant ball handler, and Glasgow basically playing on the wing and being the guy that you throw the ball to with a few seconds to go if you've got nothing and go and try and make a play. And so it suits them. So yeah, they're, they're clearly playing with a lot of confidence. As I say, their issue will be when they've got to integrate others.
Jones 24, Smith 7 of 10 for 19 points, Johnson 14 points. Rest of the team combined 22.
See, that's their three guards, isn't it? They're the people who are touching the ball the most. The people who are touching the ball the most are scoring the most. And I think Cassie got 2 threes in transition. But basically, the half court offense is not creating anything for anybody else. When you've got a 7 foot big guy and you're asking him to run him down the court in the SLB, and he is 0 for 0 in 20 minutes, that is a problem. That means he's not touching the ball because either his teammates don't trust him or because he's not interested in passing it to him. You're not going to get the best out of him like that. So I felt a bit sorry for Nicholson because defensively, at times he was very good, particularly when Kern was in the game, he was able to block off the lane, but they weren't throwing him the ball.
Caledonia Gladiators 76, Surrey 89 is 93. Spielman didn't play. Kuntz is obviously still out. Trading runs early on, not a lot in it. Surrey just shading at 18 to 24. Key run came in the second quarter when Surrey went from 22-26 in front to 23-46 in front in a 6-minute spell. A bit like the Sheffield game. That was the one run.
And that was the game, and that was a fire. It's a 5 alarm fire for Caledonia because, as you say, Spielman's not there. They've basically got no backup for Spielman. So in this game, they started Fagbenley. I think played 11 minutes. He was -11. And also they started Ragsdale, and so Malcolm came off the bench. Ragsdale so far has had 2 stinkers of games when he started. And he's off the bench. He's been absolutely dynamite. So there's a kind of a mentality thing there, I think. But they it was a fire because it led me to worry for them this game because the run that they got, it was Surrey picked up their defense substantially, but not what you saw with London later on in that night. Surrey's defense was better. And Surrey certainly, if you remember last time they played them down at Surrey, Caledonia made a ton of threes and won the game.
Yeah.
And so Surrey obviously had that in mind. And would you believe it? With that focus, Caledonia are 0-10 from threes at half time.
Yeah.
It's amazing how little things matter. That's not a fluke.
No.
That's because they're only got 10 looks, and they're not getting the greatest looks because of what happened to them last time they played them. And Caledonia would have felt good having played them last time and dropped 100 of them in Surrey. Um, but kind of the lack of, I mean, outside of Jimenez and Carr, and a little bit from Wright, and I like Wright, and he does keep going, but you see why he fitted into Leicester as a sixth man last year because of the boost that he gives them. But outside of those three, in this game, you really didn't see much.
Mm.
And Surrey dominated them in basically every area, and rebounding in particular. Um, you just don't see many hustle players. You don't see many intangible players from Caledonia. Not with that group. You just don't. They're just not there. And a part of that, I think, that might be why they brought in the new big guy. Um, I think part of that is, Alan. I think Alan is a problem in that way because I think he plays at one speed. He plays at European speed in a non-European league, um, or a non-European playing league. And, while, Holland makes some plays, he doesn't ever impose his kind of will on the game. He's more of your pesky point guard than your dominant point guard, if I can put it that way. And I just thought, oh, they kind of dissipated, and that you didn't see the belief in each other, or the embarrassment that you really should have seen about the way they were getting beaten that second quarter. Surrey, the opposite applies because they grew in confidence as they realised, well, hang on a minute, we can, we do the right things here. We're good. Lily had 10 points in the first quarter. Lily's a shooter. Caledonia have to know that. They really didn't treat him like he was. Ling came in and dominated in the second quarter with some little floaters, and just on the offensive glass, and basically ate them up inside. And just overall, even though they didn't get much of a game out of Polite, everybody else was open. They shot the ball when they were meant to. Small had 14 rebounds, and he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's something that Caledonia don't really have when Spielman's not there.
Mm.
They have Fag Benley, but they can't get Fag Benley on the court because of his offensive difficulties. So they don't have that kind of length and that rebounding that Small gave them. And they fundamentally dominated them, didn't they?
Did
You
completely.
didn't see the game. I mean, what I
I
will say,
did. I didn't bother watching the second half back. I did have it on. I did have it
yeah,
on. I was just thinking of the pints I should have been drinking with my mate Pete and Duffy's.
yeah. 8 and 3/4 seconds was the record this week.
What was that?
That was Hayden Ling in the paint before he laid one in.
Oh, okay.
As with the ref standing watching this giant 7 footer literally stand in the paint for 8.5 seconds before someone throws him the ball. The game was far gone by that point.
Yeah,
But even so, still not overly great, I'm afraid. And we are having an absolute what's the best, a goaltend apocalypse in the league at the moment.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
literally I mean, there's probably two goaltends a game that aren't being called.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Everywhere. It's just, and my theory on that is it's because if you're used to referencing Division Two and Division Three, there aren't many.
yeah,
You don't have to judge whether the ball's been taken off the backboard or not because
yeah,
people can't get up high enough to do it
yeah, yeah,
or pull the rims down and stuff like that. It's just
yeah,
not something that the rest we've got are acquainted to.
yeah,
But I mean, it's too many to mention. Seriously,
yeah,
too many to
yeah,
mention.
yeah, yeah.
And they really wind coaches up.
Yeah, they
But
do.
it's because it's a momentum play. The other team's
Yeah,
generally running off the back of it,
yeah,
and it should be
yeah,
2 points and taking the ball out when you're setting your defense. So they're
yeah,
big players,
yeah.
and yeah, not great.
Allen, 17 points. Holland, 15 points, 8 rebounds, 5 steals. Wright, 14 points, 4 of 22 from three, just to underline your point
A
of
ton of
earlier.
it, and then their stats are empty stats because the game wasn't close.
Right,
It was a 25-point game in the fourth quarter. And they had a little run at the end. It wasn't even a fake comeback. It was a
yeah,
fake. It was Newcastle at Leicester. It was
yeah,
like it was that type of game.
Small, 19 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists. Lily, 16. Ling, 5 of 5 for 13 points in 12 minutes.
They got good minutes out of Duanko as well. He came on and and finished a couple of times at the rim and looked quite active. And just they were just so much more together than Caledonia were.
Mm. Not that I'm encouraging people to slide into my DMs, but I did get a message asking does SMB know the last time Surrey were 500 after 6 games of the season? So does SMB know that, Dave?
No, SMB has no clue whatsoever. Albeit this half of SMB doesn't know. Sure, that half does.
2019-20 was the last time that Surrey were 500 after 6 games, or 3-3, whichever way you want to look at it, in league play, obviously. It's only the ninth time at 500 or better since Guildford Heath
Interesting
was
thing about
formed
that
in
is though that
2005.
I think they're 2-0 on the road.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
They won at Manchester and they won at Caledonia and they come to
yeah,
Newcastle on Friday. Newcastle are on a 6-game losing streak.
yeah.
So that's a really interesting game. And they're
They're
2-0 on
the
the road.
only undefeated team that isn't named London on the road.
The road, so that's a kind of a really positive. I mean, it was the way they won that game. They won that game, as I say, it's always, how much is it Caledonia, how much is it Surrey? I think, probably I would say 65-35 Surrey.
Mm, mhm,
But, Caledonia have some issues to resolve. And Spielman is the one guy who they don't have another one of.
mm, mm.
And he's not playing, that's a problem.
Cheshire Phoenix 74, London Lions 89. Ryan Mikesell finally in for his SLB debut after his injury. Cheshire out to a 10-3 start. And to be honest, they held that lead all the way through to halftime. Zona gave them some great minutes off the bench in the second quarter. They led by 12 just a minute to go to halftime, but it was an impressive start from them.
Yeah, they play. I mean, Cheshire's a team you have to adjust to, and it's very difficult to adjust to them. And because the kind of the guns are firing from all over, you don't quite know where the action's going to be. And you're right about Zona. He came in, and he's quite a rugged guy defensively as well. And gets the odd offensive rebound as well as knocking down that kind of quick release three, which he did a couple of times. And London played with the game a little bit. I thought you've got Mike Sell, who's literally come in to play. He played 8 minutes on Tuesday night, but he's nowhere near playing a game at even the SLB level at this point when you've had no pre-season and you're playing against guys who are in the middle of the season, in the middle of rhythm. So they put him in, and that meant that I don't know if Williams is injured, but Williams wasn't there. Lithuanian guy wasn't there either because they've only got the four imports. Obviously, they can play. They then coach stuck to his patterns, his substitution patterns, even when it was going south for them a little bit. I thought Sandy was immense in this game. He only
Mm,
played 16 minutes, but I thought he was a real game changer in this
yeah,
game.
yeah.
In the first half, his development has probably been, over the past 3 years, has probably been the greatest indicator of what you can do with a good attitude and a lot of resource as a
Mm,
club. The player's got a good attitude and the club's got a lot of resource.
mm,
Where he's come, he's now a solid SLB rotation player, and he wasn't that
mm,
for his first year. But the improvement's been palpable. And I thought he made a massive difference to them in this game because of his energy. Um, Cheshire played the way Cheshire do. They basically attacked and attacked and attacked, and they played off energy and made enough shots. And whilst London were figuring it all out to stay ahead. Um, but the difficulty with that against a team as long as London is, I mean, is that you have to be able to keep scoring for those 40 minutes. And when London, like a really good team should, like a Eurocup team should, when they figured out what it was that Cheshire were doing, their length, their individual defense picked up a little bit. Their length just took away from Cheshire's offense. And the
mm,
reason it did was because Cheshire's very far. It's five out, five guys on the perimeter, and there's a lot of one-on-one play. They don't set that many screens. Skylar occasionally does. They set some down screens on the wing on dribble handoffs, but not really that much. It's all about getting the right matchup and attacking, or getting the right matchup. It's Policelli stepping back and shooting the three or whatever. And when London kind of established that, um, and they tightened their defense a little bit, and suddenly it was harder for Robinson to get to the rim. It was harder for Rideau to throw the ball around. And until the middle of the fourth quarter, when Adamu fell asleep twice on Brenchley on catches on the wing, Cheshire couldn't get a look,
Mm,
you
mm,
know, and that was an exemplification of levels. I'm
mm,
afraid, Cheshire did everything they normally do. They played with emotion, they played with intensity, they played with energy. Um, but ultimately, the things that they need to do well in that gym to win, they need to score the ball with regularity, and they need to look after their own defensive rebounding. Against London's size, they couldn't. London had 20 offensive rebounds, so
yeah.
you can't run off that. And if you can't run, then you've got to score in the half court. And in the half court, you had those moments where individual players got going, be it Zona, be it Brenchley, Rideau occasionally, Robinson occasionally, but that's kind of ephemeral, whereas London are moving the basketball around.
Mm,
And then it was like at the end of the third quarter, it was back to where we were 2 years ago with Aaron Wright taking over.
mm, yeah. So
Just
in the third quarter, just before we get to that, Diggins with a three early in the third quarter. Cheshire didn't make another field goal until the final seconds of the quarter. London went on a 25-3 run to blow the game open, 50 to 64, and then
Yeah, and it was one of those. It was a stifling run, wasn't it?
mm,
It wasn't a sugar rush run. It was
no,
stifling. It was defensively. It was
yeah,
stifling, and and to a certain degree, I'm kind of the view that the best way to beat London might be not to be that in their face.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Might be just to
yeah,
creep up on them nicely,
yeah, yeah,
shake
yeah,
their hands for three quarters, and
yeah,
just
yeah,
play with them, and then because I think when you and obviously we have the whole Philip Rideau thing going on,
yeah,
but when you rile them, I do think there was
yeah,
a couple of those guys. I mean, Dean Williams was excellent again with his length defensively.
yeah,
McGusty is a guy who can, play. And unfortunately, however the closer game might have been, even in the third quarter, the tail is given away by the box score, which shows that not one London player played more than 24 minutes, 50
yeah,
seconds.
yeah,
And that the coach was comfortable enough to put Goodwin in at the beginning of the fourth quarter,
yeah,
even though he hadn't played a minute. He's using that game for development of Goodwin.
yeah, yeah.
It was that he didn't need to put Goodwin in.
No,
He's got 10
no,
guys.
yeah.
So,
I think if you're going to beat them, you need to take the lead just before the buzzer.
yes, at the end, yeah,
Yeah,
that
at
might
the
be
end.
right. Yeah, not,
Don't
not, not
don't
to.
upset them beforehand. Don't
Well,
get
that's
them to
right. I mean, but
feel
that
like you're gonna.
I thought, I mean, you might be wrong. You were there. I thought that was palpable.
Mm,
And again, it was a very physical game, and again, the refs struggled with it a little bit. Um, but there was an interesting little vignette with Rideau and Scott on the floor.
yeah, I couldn't quite see what happened. I
Watch
was
back
just
on the
trying.
video, and
Yeah,
Rideau ends up kind of on top of him, and
yeah,
supporting saying that he elbowed him. He elbowed down on him, but Scott didn't seem to be complaining that much. But the problem with Rideau is that he loses all kind of on a 50-50. You
mm,
immediately assume the worst.
yeah, yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? So maybe he's been slightly harshly treated there. But they were kind of like London were kind of like a gunfighter who was kind of forced back into. I'm making this up as I go. It was forced back into the saloon early in the
yeah,
movie.
yeah,
Eventually, kind of came out and he shot, knocked a couple over. Came out and said, "Right, I'm here. Come and take us on."
yeah, yeah.
And then basically, put 5 rounds into Cheshire.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I mean, it doesn't really change anything, but Cheshire are still probably the hardest team to beat in at home in the
mm,
league. Maybe them in Sheffield, but it just shows that London kind of have a different level because they could put players back in there. They've got 11 guys who can play. They played 24 minutes. Aaron Wright's the fifth option, and you're looking and thinking, "Oh right, okay, how do we deal with this?"
mm. Robinson, 17.6 rebounds, 4 assists. Brenchley, 16 points and 6 rebounds. Rideau, 11 points and 5 assists, 38% field goal percentage. And they started out pretty well. It went down as the game went on.
Yeah, they got. I mean, it's tough with Cheshire because you don't know, how much of it is just the play with such emotion and the heart is on their sleeve. And Skylar didn't play many minutes in the first half because Zona played so well, and then he came out in the third quarter. He was pointing at people on the bench. He wasn't very happy. I just don't. You don't know if that kind of makes any impact on. I'm not sure it does, but against most teams, with most teams, I would look at it and think, oh, there's a bit of kind of dissension going on here, but they all seem to, almost revel in it.
Mm.
But I just thought it was just a question of length, not even talent, but length. I mean, Adamu's been starting at the point. He struggled in this game because he struggled playing against Rideau because Rideau is defensively really up and into you, and gave up a couple of threes in the end, airballed a shot. He didn't look comfortable at all. But the rest of them, and I thought Sandy in particular, just exceptional.
Mm. Scott, 13.8 rebounds. Randall, Sandy, and Rye all had 12. Rye was 5 for 5. You mentioned the 20 offensive rebounds. They had 54 bench points, London, which by percentage, i.e., 54 out of the 89, is top 20 in the era in which bench points have been on live stats, which is I think about
Well,
7 years or
clearly, I
8
mean,
years.
Sabonis is working towards a greater goal, isn't he?
Mm,
And he's trying to make sure he's trying to keep them all fresh for the games. We've had less games this season, which probably helps him a little bit. He can rotate in and out Americans which helps him a little bit, I imagine. Um, and I mean, they're playing more Americans in Europe, aren't they?
mm. Yeah, everybody can play in Europe.
Which is interesting because yeah, I think I don't know what the rule is, Eurocup, AMBL, the rule is that you can only play as many as you're allowed to in your home team, in your home
Mm,
country. Um, so they're able to kind of manage resources that way, almost like an NBA team,
mm.
And it's difficult to imagine them
I
going
think I
into
think the I'm not sure there is necessarily a rule in that because I'm
yeah,
sure that
fair enough.
at least one of the German teams carries an extra American that only plays in Eurocup.
Right. Fair enough. And well, there's probably not a more difficult kind of game for them to go into than, the physicality of Cheshire at Ellesmere Port at the moment,
Mm,
and playing like they believe, in each other, and then to be down at half time as well, but to kind of regard it as almost no, okay, let's start playing now, as opposed to kind of getting frustrated by it.
yeah, yeah,
Kind of ultra impressive. It's a death march, isn't it? Let's be
it
honest.
is. Yeah, I'm sure Niall will correct me if I'm wrong about the German teams.
Yeah.
League table then. Did I
Hey, we
get
got a
I
mention in it. We got a mention.
Oh, did we? I haven't listened to it yet.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah. You gave us a
I
mention.
didn't have a chance.
Something about this game will be shorter than an episode of some.
Oh no, he
Yeah,
did text me because I,
yeah,
I I watched the second. I watched that back on Synergy properly, and actually for some reason the audio was really low, so I couldn't hear. No, what a shame.
yeah.
But yes, no, he did. He did mention. He did say that he mentioned that in a slightly
I'd
disparaging
say,
way.
I'll take anything.
Yeah. Well, when you finish listening to this podcast, your Set Brit podcast, go listen to Niall. League table, London Lions 8-0, top of the standings. Sheffield into second now,
Can they do
7.
it, Dan? Can they go
Uh,
undefeated?
nobody goes undefeated.
I know, I knew you'd say that.
Nobody goes undefeated. But there is part of me go, well, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, Sheffield 7-4. Bristol 6-3. I don't think they'll lose a game
That
that
matters.
matters. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Bristol 6-3, Cheshire 5-5, Surrey 3-3, Manchester 3-4, Leicester 3-5, Newcastle 2-6, and Caledonia 2-9.
9, oh dear.
Mm.
Didn't realize they played that many games. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is what it is.
Yeah, it
But,
is.
Newcastle Surrey is quite important like this week because if Surrey, you're looking at levels in the league,
Mm.
and you're looking at London, then you're looking at probably Cheshire and Sheffield at this point in time, just the way that they're playing. And then everybody else is kind of much of a muchness, and there's a lot of close games going on. It's
Mm.
outside of Caledonia.
Mm.
So how you win, if you win those close games, you're going to move up quite quickly.
Mm.
And if you don't, you
I
could
think
end up
that's
at the
one of the
bottom.
things that sort of extenuates the London thing is there isn't a great deal between everybody else, so everybody else is beating everybody else.
Yeah,
So
so
therefore, you end up with a lot more losses than if you had, you know,
you had to win.
Newcastle and Leicester or Cheshire and London of a couple of years
Every
ago.
game was eyeballs out,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
basically. Yeah,
yeah,
every
yeah.
game was eyeballs out. Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm.
Aye. But yeah, we'll see.
We will indeed. And Dave and I will be back next week to do it all over again. I think it'll probably be Monday again next week, but I'll not have the distraction of Troy Parrott until March now. Whee!
I've never heard of Troy Parrott. And he's
You've
got
never
five
heard of
goals.
Troy
I have
Parrott?
now, but he's got 5 goals in 2 games, didn't he?
5 goals in 2 games, unbelievable.
I know that, yeah. Dear me, Troy Parrott. I mean, what kind of Irishman's called Troy Parrott? Anyway, what a ridiculous name.
He's
But no, I saw the last one was yeah. There's
amazing.
nothing better than a full subs off the bench on the court on the
Yeah,
they literally when you're away from home. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Nothing better than that.
But when you scream in the corner of the corridor at EPSV and everybody turns around and goes, "What's going on?" It's a little bit different. But yes, yeah, yeah. Right. So on that excitement, we'll be back next week. So see you then. Have a good week, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.